D.C.
Let me just point out just quickly that when you talk about Cincinnati, the initial allegation was this was a rogue office, an IRS office in Cincinnati, and that they were responsible for all of this. Go ahead.
Exactly, and that's where the president is reintroducing things that have already been disproven. But let's understand, this is an administration that wants to have you believe a video launched the Benghazi murders, when in fact that was disproven. And even after it was reintroduced by this administration again and again, including by this president, Senator Feinstein and the Select Intelligence Committee in the Senate, led by Democrats, have made it clear that the factors that led to that had a lot more to do with terrorism than it ever would a video.
All right, that brings up my final question for you, because you have come under fire, both in the IRS and Benghazi and other investigations of your committee for political witch hunts. And they point specifically to a speech you gave to a GOP fundraiser in New Hampshire in February about the Benghazi terror attack. Here's a clip.
Why there was not one order given to turn on one Department of Defense asset. I have my suspicions, which is Secretary Clinton told Leon to stand down.
But the Washington Post fact checker cited that bipartisan report you mentioned from the Senate Intelligence Committee that there were no stand down orders, and there's also no evidence that Clinton ever spoke to Leon Panetta, then Defense Secretary, that night. And for the second time, they gave you 4 Pinocchios, which is their highest level of falsehood. How do you respond to that, sir?
Well, first of all, the first one was for quoting something that was in somebody else's report, believing that it was true, which is an unusual way to get 4 Pinocchios. But in this case, the Secretary of State was responsible for this normalization policy that existed in Benghazi. Witnesses have told us that they asked for help. The president himself implied that he told Leon Panetta, then Secretary of Defense, to use what efforts they could. And what we know for a fact is not one aircraft, not one rescue of DOD was launched to get there in that 8.5 hours.
But to be honest, you do not have any evidence that Secretary Clinton told Leon Panetta to stand down.
Well, the use in answering questions in a political fundraiser, that was in response to a question. The term stand down is not used in some sort of an explicit way, but rather the failure to react, the fact that only State Department assets and only assets inside the country were ever used, that members of the armed forces, gun-carrying, trained people, were not allowed to get on the aircraft to go and attempt the rescue. Those kinds of things, through State Department resources, represent a stand down. Not maybe on the technical terms of stand down, soldier, but on what the American people believe is a failure to respond when they could have.
All right. Congressman Issa, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in today. And again, we want to point out the big news, and the big news is that Lois Lerner, according to her attorney, is going to waive her Fifth Amendment rights and will testify before ICE's House Oversight Committee this week. Thank you for the news, and we'll be following the hearing.
Thank you, Chris.